John chapter 6, verse 64. But there are some of you that believe not. For Yahushua knew from the beginning who they were that believed not, and who should betray him. And he said, Therefore said I unto you, that no man can come unto me, except it were given unto him of my Father. From that time many of his disciples went back, and walked no more with him. Then said Yahushua unto the 12, Will ye go away also go away? Then Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom shall we go? Thou hast the words of eternal life, and we believe that and are sure that thou art the Mashiach, the Son of the living power. Yahushua answered them, Have not I chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil? He spake of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, for he it was that should betray him, being one of the 12. I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Yasharallah, and salutation to the Akim throughout the four corners of the earth, preaching the truth and sincerity, and keeping the faith of Yahweh Shai and the gospel. This is Hawa Ya'Allah. Just going into just a brief lesson, just concerning, basically this truth of ours and, how real it is. And, just seeing from the brothers over there in Charlotte, the GMS Charlotte camp, and, them doing a lesson on a couple of the fallouts that they had in their camp. And this is just basically just for overall edification, just for brothers to understand that this is something that occurs, in this truth. And it's something that is should also be humbling, that we should be always examining ourselves to examine whether or not we're really in the faith and really if we're really believe on Yahweh Shai. Okay, now kind of just gonna go into this particular chapter in John chapter 6, because a lot of times we we might hit up a lot of times that John 6 and 63, it is the spirit that quickeneth the flesh profited nothing. The words that I speak to you, they are spirit and they are life. But when we get into these scriptures, man, there's a lot of bitter things in this, in the fact that really you don't really have as much control over your salvation, because really it's the Father that has to give you over into Yahweh Shai, for you to believe. All right, but at the end of the day, you know that's the reason why you got to give diligence to make your call and election sure. To always put your mind towards doing this work as much as you can, and meditating on good things, and also making sure that you have an honest way towards this truth. That you're approaching this thing in sincerity. Okay, now if you go into some of the words, just kind of just thinking about what Yahweh Shai was saying, you know, he says here on 65th verse, he says, Therefore said I unto you that no man can come unto me except it were given unto him of my Father. And so even certain men that even come to Yahweh Shai, all right, that come to him, that fall out, they were given by, Yahweh, all right, the Most High, to be given to him in order to fall out. So the Most High will do that. And the same men that fell out back then, all right, are gonna fall out today as well. In the last days, okay, because we're really approaching a very sensitive time, all right, in the history of creation. I mean, we're talking about we're approaching one of the most critical points, really the most critical points in the history of what you would say is mankind, right? But really the history of our nation, man. And we're really at the last few seconds, of this rulership of Esau going down, and it's all spiritual, because really in the spirit, the men who've already been, selected and chosen as being the elect, all right, and then the 1/3, the women and the children, and the other men or whatever that believe or that are going to be basically granted mercy, that's already happened. You read it in the scriptures, man. It's already done. The work was already finished when Yahweh Shai you know, died on the cross, for our sins. So this is a heavy thing right now. So, as we're right now, seeing all the news that's going on, all right, with basically the expansion of the War Powers Act, which allows Obama to institute martial law pretty much in anywhere in the world, or institute basically his aggression, right? All right, which really that's all set up by the elites. But we know that things is really going to start getting real serious here in Babylon, okay? And the reason why I'm saying that is because we gotta make sure, all right, that we are have our eyes more and more focused on this kingdom, all right, more than ever, because this is a time when Satan, all right, the spiritual demon Satan, all right, and he works through Esau, is gonna send out those the seducing, you know, uh, vibes, all right, the vibration of this world to try and sift brothers out, man. All right, so Satan is a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. All right, so this is a time for us to be very circumspect. All right. Now, it says here that after he said that in the 66th verse, he says, "From that time, many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him." Right? So these were people that followed Yahweh Shai, saw the miracles, heard the words of the kingdom. All right. But what happened at that time? They went back and walked no more with them. And this is what happens, because these are people we could talk about all these other groups like, GOCC and IUIC, you know, pretty much you got reprobates that are out there, but we got to look into, ourselves, you know, because of the fact that this is a time that we have to have a lot more fear, in this thing. And these are disciples that followed him and walked no more with him. Okay. And that was an example that you've seen, all right, with those two men, all right, those two fallouts from the GMS Charlotte camp shows you just how real this thing is. And we've heard many other stories, of other men that were in the truth and that fell out and stopped following Yahweh Shai, okay, and walked no more with them. Okay, now this is what Yahweh Shai said unto the 12, all right, will ye also go away? All right, because see, when people start falling out, then that's where sometimes you get tested, because of the fact that, if someone was, someone was close to someone, uh, in their camp, or if they knew of somebody that maybe they followed, and that person falls out, that could cause somebody who's weak, who wasn't really rooted in Yahweh Shai, to fall out as well. All right, that's the reason why it's always stressed to you have to build your foundation on a rock and not on another man. Okay, because you could actually, a man could actually fall out because they were following a man, all right, or relying on the strength of another man, and the Most High might take that person out, or have that person fall out, like we've seen, from other camps, and someone might fall out with that person because they're weak, and we've seen where certain men fell out of the truth, and other men were able to still, keep going. And an example of that is just seeing how, you know, the apostles, kept doing the work even though other men were falling out the truth. So you've seen how Apostle Tahar, Apostle Gabar, Apostle Ramlad, Rakar, Apostle Rakar as well, and the other men that were with them from, going back to their Connecticut camp that they had. They came out of the old One West, and there were a lot of fallouts that they witnessed, during that time, but they continued going. Okay, so, but really, just kind of showing you just Peter's response, okay, because at the end of the day, Peter understood who this was all about. It wasn't about those other men that fell out. Okay, it didn't matter if that was a blood brother, a twin brother. Okay, you know exactly who you have to follow. This is what Peter said. He said, "Then Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom shall we go? Thou hast the words of eternal life, and we believe and are sure that thou art Mashiach, the Son of the living power." All right. So I mean, where else can we go, man? This is it. I mean, there's nothing here in this world that's worth salvaging, man. I mean, you got to really hate your life, man, to really be a disciple of Yahweh Shai. Because if you really hate your life, man, there's nothing out here that's really going to make you desire, this current age that we're in, especially in the last days. But the scary thing about it is that in the last hour that we're in, you know, you're gonna have men that are gonna fall out. You know, they're gonna fall out, man. Something's gonna sift them out because the thing about it is really, that shows you just the level of fear you gotta have because really it's not by your own will because the Most High can set, if it's not meant for a man to make it, you've seen people fall out just within the last year. Overall, if you just look around, certain men have fallen out, over the last year or two, you know, uh, and you're just like, dang, like we're at the end of this thing and this man is falling out. But that's the thing about it is that it's all according to the choice and choosing of the Most High. And one thing we got to understand is that we can't look at ourselves as if we've already made it, and you can't do counting. Hey, when you can't do counting and say, well, look, there's this many brothers at this camp, there's this many brothers at this camp doing the work, and I know this brother, blah 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 blah. At the end of the day, the reality is we don't know who the one 444,000. We don't know all the men who've been selected. We don't know the works of men in other countries. You got countries out there where they don't really post videos. You got people that are out there that are just doing the work, and they're basically there's who knows what kind of works is being done out there. You know, there's men in other countries doing miracles, man. Most sides using them, they're doing miracles. And a lot of people are coming into the faith, believing, and we don't even know about it because we're just here in Babylon. Really, to be honest, we're in our own little bubble, here in Babylon. A lot of times we don't really understand how much of a bubble and how closed off we are from the rest of the world. So you can kind of get in your mind that, hey, look, I'm part of that number, man. I'm doing the work. I'm doing, I'm out there on the streets preaching, week in and week out, and you can fool yourself. You can really fool yourself in this thing, and Satan will take you on a ride if you really and start going into that ego if you really believe that you already made it, and that you think that, look, I'm doing week after week, I'm going out and teaching, I'm doing the work, and you might just be not really in the truth, just deceiving yourself. So we always, that's why you always got to do an examination of yourself of, okay, am I really in this truth, am I really in this for sincerity, or am I going to camp, or am I going and trying to do the work because I don't want to be laughed to scorn, but I really don't want to be doing this. Those are the type of questions that someone has to ask themselves, man, because this is a serious matter. All right. So I'm kind of just gonna go hit a few precepts. This is just something that was just on my mind earlier today. After watching the brothers' video over there at GMS Charlotte, and this is the serious work that we're in. All right, so let me just hit this Proverbs 21 and verse 16. All right, the man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. Okay, what's the way? The way is Yahweh Shai, for he said he's the way, the truth, and the life. All right, so the way of understanding is just knowledge, just truth. All right, if you do that, you're going to remain in the congregation of the dead. All right, because the only thing that's left is basically judgment. And that's one thing also as well. A brother should never want another brother, anywhere to fall out the truth. All right, because if you just, uh, because desiring someone to follow the truth, you're wishing death upon them. Desiring that someone, might have a situation where they might stumble and fall out the faith, and then you can glory at their fall. That's something that your mind shouldn't be on. And you know, and it's kind of like when you have that mentality, someone has that mentality, and this is for anybody, you got brothers that have been, continued doing the work. Maybe they're, there's continuing laboring. Maybe they're no longer with the camp no more, but they're still out there laboring. But at the end of the day, you're like, look, I can't judge if this man is a servant of Yahweh Shai. Yeah, and I'm not going to prevent the man from doing whatever he's doing. And you got to just basically continue focusing on your own salvation and working it out with fear and trembling, because no one knows who is part of that number, man. The only day we're going to know is when the deliverance comes. All right, when all hell breaks loose, that's in that time we're going to know if the Most High is really dealing with us. Okay, but for those that fall out, you know, and basically, are out of the truth and they're no longer have their hand to the plow, they're in the congregation of the dead, and we seen, man, you saw the video with the brothers out there in GMS Charlotte camp, man. The brother was the brother that fell out, man. Those brothers was bugged. Hey, those guys were bugged out. They're done. I mean, there's no refreshing those men. They turned fully back into the world, man. The only thing that's left is for them to just, for their bodies to be destroyed, all right, on this side, and for them to receive their judgment, and for them to wake up in their right mind in the kingdom, But for us, let's continue to labor, that we hopefully might be able to receive that salvation and be delivered from the hands of our enemies, all right, and from the hands of those that hate us. Okay. Now go ahead and go into let's see. Let me get that first Timothy chapter 4. Let's see. Yeah, First Timothy chapter 4. Start at the top. It says here, now the Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Okay? And so what? In the latter times, we're right now in the latter times, man. And the thing about it, man, is that Esau, all right, has this thing turned up with his social media. He's basically, working with that CERN stuff to basically open up a portal, all right, of spiritual wickedness. That's what he's planning on doing, all right, to get these demons out here to start bothering brothers more and more, and start jumping on people, in our lives, to basically cause us to try and fall away, and that's the type of stuff that's going to be happening. Those smooth words of a woman, is going to get a lot of brothers as well. Those smooth words of somebody preaching, an incorrect doctrine is going to get a lot of people as well. If you're not rooted in the faith, and the cares of this world as well. Someone telling you, hey, look, you can make hey, man, you can get into this, you can make a whole bunch of money. That's the type of offers that's going to start happening, in these last days, in these last times that we're in, that basically are not profitable for us, okay? And so, things is going to be happening, and we always got to keep ourselves circumspect for what's going on in and around us, all right? It says here, speaking lies. Well, let me go into that doctrines of devils, right? You've seen an example of the doctrines of devils is that mountains of Israel, all right? That camp that's out preaching, complete off-brand doctrine, man. And you got a lot of people that come into the truth and they believe, well, they come into the nationality. I'll put it like that. They come into the knowledge of who they are, that they're Israel, all right? And they end up realizing, okay, I believe in this thing, but then there might be something wrong. That maybe they got, a half brother or a half sister or a friend or a coworker that they're cool with that's of another nation, and they know in the spirit that this person's of another nation, and they realize, well, look, this person is not going to get delivered. They're going to be destroyed because anybody who's a heathen is going to automatically receive the judgment. That's just what's going to happen on this side, okay? Especially over here in Babylon. They're just not going to be able to escape the nuclear missiles. All the things that's coming, they're not going to be able to escape. If they escape the sword, the famine, all right, the concentration camps, or whatever, they're still going to get hit by the missiles. And you might have somebody that say, you know what? I don't believe that. I believe that they should be able to have a chance of salvation, and then that's when they go deal with men like Baloo, okay, or Mountains of Israel, which basically gives an open door of salvation, all right, for these heathens, okay. So that's what's happening, and that's the reason why you got groups like Mountains of Israel up. The Most High, the Most High, set them up on the left hand side, whether it was the spiritual demon Satan that went to that man and to push out that doctrine, or whether it was Satan incarnate, all right, Esau, who set them up. They're gonna take a multitude of people that were not meant to get this truth, okay, or that were meant to basically, fall away from this truth, okay. Speaking lies and hypocrisy, because that's what their whole doctrine is, man. It's lies in hypocrisy. It doesn't even line up with the scriptures, man. It completely is against what is written in the scriptures. All right, having their conscience seared with the hot iron, so they're not gonna. It's not gonna be removed from their mind. Okay, forbidden to marry. All right, and abstaining from meats which the Most High hath created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and know the truth. All right. So forbidding to marry, we're not going to forbid. Hey, if a man, like Apostle Tahar says, if you meet a woman and you like her and she's liking you, we're not going to tell a brother, hey, look, man, you shouldn't deal with her. We don't know what the Most High is doing. We don't know if the Most High, if now you start you are with this woman and you might be the one that you might be redeeming her. You might be the one that she just likes you, provides you comfort in the last days. We don't know what's going on, because we can't judge on those type of things. Okay? Because it's not the man is not doing anything unlawful, all right, by him taking a wife. All right? I'm gonna say the word wife, okay? Meaning that she's joined unto you. Okay? So, you know, but now, of course, we tell also in the same token, just from a balance perspective, that if you have a wife and she's hindering you from doing the work, you got to pray and find a way to get more of this work in, whatever it is. Of course, there's going to be a balance to all things, so we're not going to tell brothers to also put away their wives, but hey, look, you might need to try and find a way, to find time, to do more of the work, especially now in the last days, so you might have to spend less time with your wife. You might have to get more find a way where you can say, look, I'm gonna be able to spend, these hours with her, but whatever it is, I might have to cut away from, maybe watching some basketball, whatever it is that a brother does in his leisure time. You might watch movies a lot. Maybe you might say, you know what, I'm gonna stop watching Netflix. I'm gonna start maybe using that time to maybe do a sit down. I'm gonna use that time to maybe read, a couple of chapters and start meditating on some word. Maybe I'm gonna use that time to start praying, whatever it is. Okay. So now, just kind of finish up, go to that Hebrews chapter 10 and just finish off, I think, the last couple of verses in there, and, just kind of how it is, man. It is just how it is in this truth. All right. So, the brethren are the ones that are doing the work, man, that are continuously fighting. Of course, brothers we're gonna go through different things at times. We're gonna need to bear one another's burdens. That's an understandable thing. That's all part of the brotherhood, and that's why we're here for one another. All right. But for those that decide that this is not for them anymore, this is how it's gonna be. Hebrews 10 and 38. Now the just shall live by faith. All right. So we should live by faith. There's no reason for us. Hey, like Peter said, he said, "Where can we go, man? For thou you have the words of eternal life." Okay? So we're going to have to keep that faith. But any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. And that's just how it is. If someone draws back, like a man like Nate, we don't have no pleasure in a man like Nate. All right? Because he denied the word, he denied the name, all right? He's turned away from the doctrine, all right, as it was originally taught, and he's teaching something that's basically going to lead to the destruction of many of our people, all right? Which basically he was destined for that anyway. So he doesn't. We don't have no. He doesn't. We don't delight in him. Okay. It says, but we are not of them that draw back unto perdition, all right, unto destruction, all right? Just like some of the men that we've named before, whether it be the Fallouts, whether it be Nate, whether it be Baloo, okay? Those are all the examples that were given to us of men that drew back unto perdition, right? But of them, so we're not like them, all right? And Abba Rataza, we continue to not be like them, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul, okay? So again, just wanted to give a little bit of, exhortation, a little bit of encouragement for brothers to continue staying in this faith. This is the simplicity of the gospel. Have faith on him that hath the words of eternal life, Yahweh Shai. So again, all praises and glory goes to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Yasharallah, and salutation to the Akim throughout the four corners of the earth, preaching the truth and sincerity, and keeping the faith of Yahweh Shai and the gospel. Shalom.